Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Community Church. I'm Pastor Cameron. This is Sermons Si7, the Gospel of Mark. Today we find ourselves in Mark chapter 6, verses 45 through 52. And as we've journeyed through Mark, it's been so awesome to see just how Jesus has been victorious. He's walking through his ministry, right? And we talked about this initially, that Mark is writing to a Gentile audience. And so he's showcasing the victory of Jesus. He's showcasing Jesus' power over things, right? His victory over death, his victory over nature, his victory over sickness, his victory over the demonic realm. These are things that we see, these snippets that we see into Jesus' life, where we see that he has authority. Well, today we're going to see how Jesus again has authority over nature, but we're going to see how his interaction with the disciples. And so, to give you a little context of what's going on, is that Jesus had received word that his cousin John the Baptist had been beheaded by Herod, right? So Jesus is grieving. He's in a time of loss. He receives the word, and so he takes his disciples away to go pray, and the multitudes follow him. The crowds, they follow him, and so Jesus has compassion on them and then feeds them, and we get the feeding of the 5,000. Well, after that, this is where we pick up. And so, verse 45, immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida. While he sent the multitude away, and he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. Now, when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. Then he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and would have passed them by. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost, and cried out, for they all saw him and were troubled. But immediately he talked to them, and said to them, "Be of good cheer. It is I, do not be afraid." Then he went up into the boat to them, and the wind ceased. And they were greatly amazed in themselves, beyond measure, and marveled, for they had not understood about the loaves, because their heart was hardened. And so that's the text today. And what do we get out of this? What observations can we glean? Well, the first observation here is that immediately he made them. Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him. So he sent them. And I'm of the opinion here that Jesus knew what was going to happen. Jesus knew that there was going to be a storm. Jesus knew that they were going to be straining at rowing, right? And some of these guys are fishermen, so they know boats. They know this sea. And yet he still sends them. He sends them into the storm because he knows he's going to meet them through this storm. But have you ever felt like that? Or have you ever felt like sometimes the Lord he's like, "Hey, I want you to walk through this. I want you to walk through this storm because it's going to do something in you that's going to allow you to grow closer to him." Man, but what's awesome here, though, is that we get the sense of the authority of Jesus, that he sent them in there knowing what was going to happen. But as he sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. We have to look at that. We have to say, man, there are times in the life of Jesus where, he's just tired. He's hungry, but he finds time to pray. He wants that fellowship with his Father. And what an awesome application for you and I to sit there and be like, there are times in our life when the storm is hitting us. There are times in our life when we're just busy. But we still need to find times to pray. We still need to find time to go alone, to be alone by yourself and pray and seek the Lord and have fellowship with the Father, right? Now, verse 47, when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. Verse 48, when he saw them straining at rowing, then he saw them straining at rowing. The two words I pick up there is he saw. He saw. Jesus saw the disciples in their straining, in their turmoil, in their work, straining against the wind, right? Or the waves, because the wind was against them. You ever felt like that? That sometimes the wind is against you and you're just straining at working? It said that when he went to them, it was the fourth watch of the night. You know what that means? They'd been at this a long time. And I have to sit there and I have to find encouragement in the fact that he sees me when I'm struggling, when I'm rowing, when I'm working hard, when I'm trying to get through these storms. He sees me. And you should take encouragement too from that fact that he sees you in your struggle, when you're straining, when you're rowing. He sees you. Well, he starts walking on the water. They see him. They were troubled. They were afraid. They're like, oh no, this is a ghost. But what do we find? We find that immediately he talked with them and said, be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid. So he sees them. He sees them in their trouble. He sees them in their work. He starts moving to them, and they get freaked out. They get a little bit scared. They're like, we think this is a ghost. We don't know what's happening. But I pick up on this, and I say that he speaks to them in their fear. He speaks to them in their distress, and he says, be of good cheer, right? It is I. Do not be afraid. And so, if you're like me, sometimes there are things that can just freak you out in this world, and you can be afraid. And I also take encouragement because in those moments, that's where I can feel the Lord saying, hey, guess what? Don't be afraid. Be of good cheer. I'm with you in this circumstance. Well, then he says, they were freaked out. They marveled. They were beyond measure marveled, but they had not understood because their hearts were hard. Don't have a hard heart today. He sees you. Don't have a hard heart. God bless you. See you next time.